Some women enter a room and it's as if the sun followed them in. Light, warmth, the kind of presence that draws eyes and settles the space. And then there are others. Women whose exit feels like a sunrise after a long, shadowed night. Because the truth is, some people don't bring peace, they only interrupt it. Now don't misunderstand me, this isn't about bitterness. It's not about blame either. It's about vision, clarity, because if you've lived even a little, and I know you have, then you've already felt it. That quiet ache when someone who should have been good for you turns out to be the very thing pulling you down. Not every smile is sincere, not every embrace is safe, and not every woman who holds your hand intends to walk beside you. Life, especially for men who fought for their place, is too short, far too sacred, to keep handing your energy, your time, and your hard-won. Peace to women who disguise their damage as depth, women who confuse your spirit, sap your strength, and leave you questioning your own worth. Especially those who wear elegance like armor, who charm with grace and beauty, but hide motives you don't see until it's far too late. So in today's video, we're pulling back the curtain. We're exploring 7 undeniable signs, behaviors you can't afford to ignore. These aren't just red flags, they're soul warnings. This isn't about passing judgment, it's about protecting your future. It's about discernment. It's about knowing who truly belongs at your table and who only came to take the bread and poison the wine. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And I would offer this addition: it also depends on the quality of the company you keep. So take a breath, sharpen your awareness, and let's walk through this, not in fear, but in strength. Are you ready? Let's begin. First, she's always the victim. The first sign is subtle but deadly to your peace. She's always the victim, not occasionally. Not once or twice, always. It doesn't matter if it's a stranger who bumped her cart at the store, her college roommate from 15 years ago, or every one of her past relationships. She's never at fault. Ever. Sit across from her and listen. At first, you'll feel sympathy, maybe even admiration. She tells you stories with passion, with emotion, how she was betrayed by her ex, how her friends abandoned her when she needed them, how her boss couldn't handle a strong woman. And in the beginning, it all sounds so believable. She paints her world with careful brushstrokes, where she is the misunderstood soul, the survivor, the one who just can't catch a break. If you're not grounded in clarity, you'll fall for it. You'll think, maybe she just needs someone who won't hurt her. Maybe I can be the one who finally treats her right. That's the trap, that's the hook, because this isn't about healing. It's about control. I knew a man once, let's call him James. Smart, dependable, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. After his divorce, he met a woman who seemed like a breath of fresh air. She was raw, open. She didn't hide her past. She spoke freely about how life had wronged her, how her ex had lied, how her parents favored her sister, how no one ever truly supported her dreams. James admired her honesty. He saw her vulnerability as strength. But as time went on, the pattern revealed itself. Every job ended in injustice. Every friend, jealous or toxic. Every ex, emotionally abusive. And worst of all, when James began setting boundaries, when he dared to suggest maybe she bore some responsibility in those broken bridges, he was cast in a new role. The villain. That's how it works. With women like this, you're either the hero who saves them or the enemy who betrays them. There's no in-between. A woman who lives in a constant state of victimhood doesn't just reject accountability, She rewrites reality. She edits every story to fit her narrative. And if you're close enough for long enough, she'll eventually write you in as the reason for her pain. And let me be clear, this isn't about genuine trauma or people who've endured real suffering. This is about weaponizing that pain to manipulate others, to keep you feeling responsible for emotions that were never yours to carry. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But a woman stuck in victimhood refuses that truth. She clings to her hurt like a shield, and she expects you to fight her battles, emotional, social, even imagined. And here's the cost. She'll drain your patience. She'll drain your strength, and slowly she'll begin to drain your peace, not with rage, but with stories. Endless stories that keep you stuck in cycles you never chose. So what do? You stop playing the rescuer. You stop carrying bags that aren't yours to hold. You offer kindness, but you anchor it in boundaries. You let your reason, not your guilt, guide your decisions. And most importantly, you pay attention to repetition. If the narrative never changes, if everyone in her life has wronged her, if you start to feel like the next man on her list of disappointments, that's your sign. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. You simply step back, quietly, respectfully but firmly, because as Stoicism teaches, peace is an internal matter. And if someone is repeatedly pulling you into emotional chaos, then protecting your clarity isn't cruelty. It's wisdom. Second, guilt as her weapon of choice. Did you know that guilt activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain? That tight grip in your chest, the slow burn in your stomach, the heaviness that seems to press on your shoulders even in silence. It's not imagined, it's real. And some women, the wrong women, know exactly how to make it hurt. The second sign of a toxic woman is this: she controls you through guilt. Not by shouting, not by demanding, but through silence, through sighs, through the calculated art of withdrawal. At first she seems merely sensitive, emotionally in tune, perhaps a little fragile. You cancel dinner to work late and she gets quiet. You suggest needing a day to recharge and her voice shifts, gentle but cold. She never yells. Instead, she makes you feel like you've failed some silent test. Like your needs are a betrayal, like your independence is personal, and so you adjust. You cancel your gym session, you reschedule that trip with friends, you answer texts faster, offer more affection, rearrange your priorities. Not because you want to, but because that look in her eyes says, "I thought you were different. I thought I mattered more." She never says it out loud. She doesn't have to. Her silence speaks. Her withdrawal punishes. Her disappointment feels like a judgment that you were never allowed to prepare for. And little by little, you give her pieces of yourself, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of hurting her, fear of being the bad guy, fear of losing the approval that she made you work so hard to earn. Here's the part that stings the most. You don't even realize it's happening until your own boundaries are blurred. You wake up one day and realize you're no longer acting from your values. You're reacting to her moods. You're tiptoeing around invisible tripwires. And your decisions, once rooted in clarity, are now shaped by the desire to avoid disappointment. Guilt has become her currency. And the more you spend, the more she demands. Not always with words, but with the pull of her silence. With withheld affection. With subtle emotional withdrawal designed to make you chase her approval all over again. You'll start explaining your actions more than living them. You'll feel like a villain in a story you never agreed to be part of. And worst of all, you'll start to forget the sound of your own voice, because she's slowly writing your script for you. But here's where Stoic wisdom cuts through the fog. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And there it is, the heart of this truth. When guilt becomes your compass, you've already given away your freedom. You're no longer choosing, you're performing. You're not living, you're appeasing. And the danger of living to avoid guilt is that you slowly become invisible to yourself. So what's the way out? Not rage, not resentment, just clarity. You draw a boundary, not with anger, but with resolve. You make decisions from your values, not her moods. You offer affection, but not in exchange for peace. And when she pulls on those familiar strings, when she leans into silence or disappointment or passive disapproval, you stay grounded. You stay still. You let her emotions rise and fall without stepping in to fix them, because a man who stands firm in his values cannot be manipulated by guilt. And freedom, real freedom, isn't found in avoiding discomfort. It's found in choosing your response to it. No woman can take that from you unless you hand it over. Third, she'd rather rewrite reality than say I was wrong. One of the clearest signs you're dealing with the wrong kind of woman doesn't always come with shouting or slamming doors. It comes in those quiet, subtle moments. Disagreements that should have lasted 10 minutes, but somehow stretch into hours. Why? Because she simply can't admit she was wrong. Not ever. You could lay out the facts with calm, respectful logic. You could bring receipts. You could explain with the patience of a monk. Even a child would understand the clarity of your position. But still, she'll find a way to twist the story, to shift the blame, to rewrite the scene so she comes out the hero and you the heartless antagonist. And if she can't win on logic, she'll move the battlefield entirely. Now it's not about the issue, it's about how you made her feel. How you always do this, how your tone was condescending or aggressive, even if it wasn't. The original disagreement? Buried. Replaced with a storm of emotion, accusation, and redirection. At first, you might give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's just pride, maybe it's a rough day. But then it happens again, and again, and suddenly you realize it's not just a habit, it's who she is. This isn't just a woman who hates being wrong. This is a woman who equates being wrong with being weak. And weakness to her is unacceptable, even if it costs the relationship. What's happening beneath the surface is deeper than simple stubbornness. Psychologically, people who refuse to admit fault often have fragile egos. To them, admitting even a small mistake feels like watching the foundation of their identity crack. So they defend it at all costs, even if it means hurting you in the process. But here's the cost she doesn't see. In trying to be right all the time, she sacrifices growth, connection, and most importantly, trust. Because when someone refuses to say, "I was wrong," they also refuse to learn. And if they can't learn, they can't grow. And if they can't grow, the relationship becomes stagnant, rooted not in love, but in power dynamics. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me. I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective. I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." That is the mark of real strength, the strength to put truth above ego, to see correction not as an attack but as a gift. Now imagine being in a relationship where that kind of humility doesn't exist, where every Disagreement turns into a psychological chess match, where your perspective is constantly under suspicion, where being the reasonable one always falls to you. That burden, it wears you down. Quietly, daily, it turns partnership into performance and love into a scoreboard. Because without humility, there's no relationship, there's just a contest. A competition of who's right, who's wrong, and who can talk the loudest without actually listening. Here's the tragic irony. By refusing to admit fault, she thinks she's protecting her dignity. But what she's really doing is cutting herself off from real intimacy. Because the words "I was wrong" are not a weakness. They're an invitation to trust, to reconnect, to evolve. Seneca once said, "Only time can heal what reason cannot." But if reason is never allowed a place at the table, if defensiveness always replaces dialogue, time won't heal anything. It will only harden the walls. So what's the Stoic response? Clarity. You choose truth over pride. You choose a partner who's strong enough to be imperfect, who can look at herself and say, "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do better." Not because she's flawless, but because she's growing, because she values the relationship more than her ego. And if she can't offer that, if every disagreement turns into a courtroom where you're always on trial, then it may be time to walk away, not in anger, not with bitterness, but out of deep respect for yourself, for truth, and for the peaceful, honest life you're building with someone who can meet you eye to eye and heart to heart. Fourth, she's addicted to drama. You'll feel this one before you fully understand it. Your stomach will tighten, your spirit will brace itself. Even when everything around you seems calm, something feels off. That's the sign, because some women aren't just emotional, they're addicted to drama. Now we all have our moments. The occasional outburst, the passionate argument. That's human. But this is something deeper. This is a woman whose entire existence feels like a never-ending performance. She's the director, the lead actress, and the script, it's rewritten by the hour, depending on who's watching. If life around her gets too steady, too still, too normal, she'll light a match and set it ablaze, not because she's in pain, but because peace bores her, because chaos makes her feel real. To her, stillness is silence, and silence is unbearable, and without even realizing it, you'll be drafted into her story. 1 minute, you're sharing a quiet evening. The next, you're in an argument over a text you didn't answer fast enough, or a glance that lasted too long, or the tone of voice you didn't even know you used. You'll find yourself saying, "I didn't mean it like that," more times than you care to count. You'll explain, apologize, overcompensate, and still it won't be enough. Because it was never about the moment, it was about the drama it could create. Here's what makes it dangerous. Drama isn't just an emotional habit for her. It's a form of control. It keeps her in the spotlight. It turns her emotions into the axis around which everyone else must spin. Seneca, the great Stoic, once wrote, "An angry man opens his mouth and shuts his eyes." And that wisdom lives here. Because a woman addicted to drama doesn't want truth. She wants tension. She doesn't seek understanding. She seeks stimulation. She's not chasing peace. She's chasing the adrenaline that comes with lighting emotional fires and watching who runs to put them out. And if you're the nearest one with a bucket of water, guess who gets caught in the flames? You'll think you're helping. You'll think, if I just say the right thing, if I just stay calm, but you're not calming anything. You're feeding the cycle. and slowly, piece by piece, it erodes your inner stillness. You'll start walking on eggshells. You'll question your tone, your timing, your every word. You'll become reactive instead of rooted. And here's the cost. When a man loses his calm, he loses his compass. So what's the solution? Distance. Not always physical at first, but emotional, spiritual. You step back from the battlefield. You let the storm rage. Without becoming the lightning rod, you observe without fixing, you feel without reacting, you respond with silence, with space, with stillness. Epictetus said, "We cannot control others. We can only control how we respond." And when you're faced with someone who thrives on turmoil, your most powerful move isn't confrontation. It's non-participation. You are not required to audition for her chaos. You don't need to perform in her play. You are not her emotional prop. Your role as a grounded man, as a stoic man, is to remain unshaken, to protect your clarity like it's oxygen, to defend your peace like it's sacred, because it is, and no matter how loud the drama gets, your greatest strength will always be found in your stillness. Not in how well you argue, but in how calmly you walk away from the performance altogether. Fifth, she lacks empathy. There's a kind of loneliness that hits hardest when you're sitting next to someone who's supposed to care, but doesn't. She's there physically, but emotionally, spiritually, she's nowhere close. The fifth sign is a quiet one, but it cuts deep. She lacks empathy. And if you've lived long enough, you know this truth already. Life will eventually take a hard turn. Maybe it's the loss of someone you love. Maybe your health falters. Maybe your work, your purpose, begins to unravel. Whatever the form, the pain comes. And in those moments, you don't just learn about hardship, you learn about people. A woman without empathy won't meet you in those shadows. Not truly. She might sit beside you, say the right words, check the right boxes. But you'll feel it, the absence, the cold distance behind her eyes, the restless fidgeting, the urge to change the subject, to make it about her again. At first, the signs are small. You say you've had a brutal week, mentally, emotionally, and she looks up from her phone just long enough to say, "That sucks. Anyway, guess what happened at work today?" She's not malicious, she's just not there. Your pain floats in the air like background noise, barely acknowledged before the spotlight swings back to her. Or maybe you open up. Not with drama, not with demands, just with honesty. Something personal, something you rarely share. And instead of leaning in, she deflects, brushes past it like you just mentioned the weather. There's a silence in that moment. Not the comforting kind, the kind that makes your chest ache with a simple truth. She doesn't feel what you feel. And she doesn't want to. I remember a man named Reuben, strong, seasoned, humble. After the passing of his wife, he started dating again. He met a woman who at first seemed thoughtful. She said all the right things. She brought flowers, cooked dinner, even listened politely, until the grief came. Not the surface-level grief, the kind that settles in after the funeral is over and the world moves on. When he just needed someone to sit with him, not fix him, not distract him, just be there. But she couldn't. She grew impatient, changed the subject, offered empty phrases like "time heals everything," then moved the conversation back to herself, her plans, her feelings, her life. And Reuben told me something I'll never forget. I felt more alone next to her than I ever did by myself. That's what a lack of empathy does. It isolates you in your lowest moments, when all you needed was presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. be one. And I would offer this: waste no more time hoping someone will become something they're not. Empathy isn't something you can teach. You can't plead for it. You can't perform well enough to earn it. It's either there or it's not. And when it's missing, you'll feel it in your bones. A woman who truly has empathy doesn't need to say the perfect words. She doesn't need to solve your pain. She just shows up, steady, sincere, and present. But a woman who lacks empathy, she might be sitting beside you, but you'll feel like you're talking through glass, like your heart is on the table and, oh, she's checking her watch. So ask yourself, if she turns away when life gets hard, if she rushes past your pain like it's an inconvenience, if you find yourself explaining your emotions just to be understood, stop, take a breath, and listen to that still voice inside, because Stoicism teaches us not to chase what we hope for, but to accept what is. And the truth is this: if she can't walk with you through the storm, she doesn't deserve a seat at your table when the sun returns. You don't have to get angry. You don't need to argue. You simply choose differently, with clarity, with dignity, with peace, because life is far too short to share it with someone who hears with her ears, but never listens with her heart. Sixth, she disrespects your time. If age teaches us anything with certainty, it's this: time is sacred. You can earn back money. You can rebuild your health with effort, prayer, or grit. But time, once it's spent, it vanishes, quietly, irreversibly. That's why a woman who disrespects your time isn't just inconsiderate. She's dangerous. Not in the loud, obvious way, but in the slow erosion of your peace, in the tiny compromises you make until years go by, and you barely remember who you were before she arrived. I once knew a man named Richard, Houston-born, mid-50s, sharp as a tack and built like the kind of man who carved his life out of bedrock. A contractor who earned every penny, every handshake, every ounce of respect the hard way. But behind the steel exterior was a softer story. Richard met a woman named Elise. She was beautiful, captivating. She had that rare ability to make a man feel seen, at least at first. But it didn't take long before the pattern began. Late to dinners, 20 minutes, then 45. Plans cancelled at the last minute with vague excuses. Sometimes she wouldn't show up at all. No call, no apology, just silence. And Richard, being patient, kept making room. He rearranged jobs, missed fishing weekends, rescheduled family dinners, not because she asked directly, but because she dangled the possibility of presence, and he kept hoping this time would be different. One afternoon I sat across from him at a local diner. Elise had stood him up again, and as he stared at his phone, not with anger, but with a heavy sort of resignation, he said something I'll never forget. "Man, I feel like I'm always waiting." Let that sink in, because that's what happens. When a woman doesn't respect your time, she doesn't just leave you waiting at the restaurant, she leaves you waiting in your life, waiting for her to show up, waiting for her to value you the way you've been taught to value others, waiting for something that was never coming. And here's the kicker: she'll make you believe it's normal. She'll smile and say, "You're so understanding." She'll shift the burden to you, subtly suggesting that your standards are the problem. But a Stoic man knows better. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And Richard? He finally saw the truth. Elise wasn't too busy. She wasn't forgetful. She was simply showing him what she valued. And it wasn't his time. Why? because she didn't truly value him. And the deeper truth? He had trained her not to. By sacrificing his schedule, his energy, and his boundaries in silence, he taught her that his time could be taken for granted. So what's the solution? It's not a dramatic confrontation. It's not ultimatums shouted in frustration. It's clarity. You learn to treat your time as what it truly is, life itself. You guard it with the same intensity you'd protect your health or your dignity. You draw lines that aren't made of emotion, but of principle. Because a woman who truly honors you will honor your time. She'll show up when she says she will. She won't make you feel like a backup plan or a time filler. She'll treat your hours as something sacred, because they are. Epictetus asked, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" So I ask you, how many more dinners will you sit through alone? How many excuses will you pretend not to hear? How many pieces of your schedule will you give away to someone who only shows up when it's convenient? Richard stopped waiting. And so should you. Because in the end, time wasted isn't just minutes on a clock. It's life you'll never get back. Spend yours where it's valued by someone who doesn't just want your presence, but respects your essence. Seventh, she's obsessed with superficial thing. The final sign is subtle in the beginning. It wears perfume. It smiles for the camera. It compliments your tie and asks how much it cost. You think it's harmless at first, even charming. But give it time and you'll see. She's not looking at you. She's looking through you at what you represent. This kind of woman doesn't hunger for truth or depth or character. She's addicted to image, to the gleam, the glitter, the applause, to superficial things. And I'm not talking about the casual love for fashion or a fondness for nice dinners. This goes much deeper. This is someone who defines herself by what she can flaunt, not by who she is when no one's watching. She measures life not by values, but by metrics. The size of your house, the label on your shoes, the likes on her latest post. To her, attention equals affirmation, style equals substance, and your worth? It's directly proportional to what you can provide on the outside. At first, you may brush it off. She just likes nice things, you'll tell yourself. But over time, you'll feel it. That quiet pressure. That growing sense that you're being ranked, not loved. No matter what you give, there's always someone else with more. A fancier car, a bigger vacation, a louder spotlight. And she's always eyeing the next rung on the ladder. You'll find yourself competing in a game you never agreed to play, a constant performance where enough is never enough. But 2,000 years ago, the Stoics already warned us about this trap. Epictetus wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And Marcus Aurelius called these surface-level distractions indifference, meaning they hold no real value in shaping your soul. Yet a woman obsessed with appearances will chase those indifferents like they're sacred. And the tragedy, she never finds contentment, only temporary highs followed by deeper emptiness, like trying to fill a broken vase. No matter how much you pour in, it all leaks out. If you attach yourself to someone like this, make no mistake, you won't just be along for the ride. You'll be dragged into comparison, into insecurity, into a life where your purpose becomes proving, impressing, performing, until you forget who you are, because to her, virtue doesn't matter. Quiet loyalty doesn't shine. Depth doesn't sparkle on the surface, and that means your character, your strength, your stillness, your wisdom will go unseen. Seneca once said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And a woman obsessed with superficial things is in truth the poorest kind of companion, not for lack of resources, but for lack of stillness, lack of peace, lack of appreciation for the richness that comes from a life well lived, not just well decorated. And here's what every Stoic man must remember: peace is everything, and peace cannot survive in a shallow world built on status. So if you find yourself with someone who values the shine more than the soul, who sees your watch before she sees your worth, understand this: you will lose yourself trying to keep up your energy, your dignity, your center. They'll all be spent chasing shadows cast by a light that was never meant to guide you. The answer isn't easy, but it is simple. Walk away, not out of anger, not to punish her, but to protect yourself, because a man who guards his peace, who knows what really matters, will never waste his life trying to impress someone who only sees the surface. Let her have her spotlight. You walk towards something real. So now you've seen them, the 7 signs, not of just any woman, but of a woman who will quietly dismantle your peace, your purpose, and your identity one subtle moment at a time. She always plays the victim. She twists guilt into a leash. She can't admit when she's wrong. She breathes drama like it's oxygen. She lacks empathy when you need her most. She disrespects the time you'll never get back. And she worships the surface while ignoring your soul. Individually, these traits might look like flaws. Together, they form a pattern, a warning, and if you're honest with yourself, you've likely seen some of these before. Maybe in someone you dated, maybe in someone you loved, maybe even in someone you're with right now. But here's the truth: Stoicism gives us, in its most unflinching form, you are not here to fix her. You are not here to explain your worth. You are not here to bleed for the promise of maybe. You are here to guard the one life you've been given, to protect your mind, to cultivate your virtue, to walk with purpose, and to walk in peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And I'll add, it also depends on the company you keep. Because you can't build a life of strength with someone who thrives on chaos. You can't find peace beside someone who profits from your pain. And you can't become who you're meant to be while staying tied to someone who drains the very best parts of you. So this isn't about bitterness. This isn't about blame. This is about vision. It's about choosing clarity over confusion, self-respect over self-sacrifice. It's about finally seeing the truth and having the courage to walk in it. So if any part of this message stirred something in you, don't ignore it. Let it awaken you. Let it free you. Because when you stop giving time to the wrong woman, you create space for the right life. 1. Filled with meaning, with peace, and with relationships that honor, not exploit, your worth. Now take a breath. Lift your head and walk forward. Not with resentment, but with resolve. Because the man who sees clearly is already halfway free. The rest is just a matter of steps.